Hello and welcome to Messenger. I'm Adriana and I'm so glad you've joined us for another inspiring episode. Today, we're diving into the story of Samuel, a prophet whose courage and faithfulness stand as a timeless example for us all. Samuel was called by God to deliver messages that weren't always easy to share. His story reminds us that speaking God's truth requires courage. It challenges us to stand firm in faith, even when the message is difficult or the audience may not want to hear it. Yet Samuel shows us that with God's guidance, we can rise to the occasion and fulfill the purpose He has for us. In a world filled with uncertainty, being willing to share God's truth can feel daunting. But Samuel's story reassures us that when God calls us, He also equips us. He gives us the words to say and the strength to share His message with love, compassion, and boldness. Pathfinders are all about being bold and courageous in their faith, just like Samuel. Today, Marlon Masomi, a Pathfinder at Bowmanville Seventh-day Adventist Church in Ontario, has an exciting activity. Let's check it out.
Hi Pathfinders, welcome back. My name is Marlon. Today, we're going to talk about something super important, courage. Do you know what courage means? Courage is being brave, even when you feel scared or unsure. Have you ever had to do something that made you a little nervous? Like trying a new activity or speaking in front of your class? It's not always easy, is it? Being brave doesn't mean you're never scared. It means trust in God and take that first step even when you are scared. Now, let me tell you about something that takes a lot of courage, rock climbing. Have you ever seen someone climb a really tall rock wall? Maybe at a gym or on TV. Rock climbing is a fun activity, but it can be frightening if you have a fear of heights. Did you know there's a rock climbing honor in Pathfinders? In this honor, we learn to climb safely and build courage along the way. Today, we're going to talk about how rock climbing teaches us about courage and trust in God. And I'll even give you a challenge you can try at home. Rock climbers use ropes, harnesses, and special equipment to climb up a wall or a mountain. But here's the thing. It's not just about being strong. It's also about being brave. When you're standing at the bottom of the wall, looking up, it can feel really high and scary. What is the most important lesson we learn from rock climbing? We don't have to do everything all at once. When you climb, you just take one step at a time, and each step, it gets you closer to the top. That's just like life. Sometimes we face intense challenges. Maybe you're the new kid at school, trying to make a new friend, or learning something that is difficult. You don't have to do all at once. Just trust God and take the first step. Here's another cool thing about rock climbing. You never climb alone. There's always someone at the bottom holding the rope to keep you safe. The person is called your belay partner. You have to trust your belay partner to make sure you don't fall. Does that sound a little like how we should trust God? God is our ultimate belay partner. He's always holding us steady, making sure we don't fall. And if we fall, He is there to break the fall. When life feels challenging or scary, we can trust that God is right there with us. The Bible reminds us of this in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. When we trust God, we don't have to be afraid of what's ahead. Just like in rock climbing, He holds us up and helps us keep going. Let's talk about fear. Rock climbers often say the hardest part isn't climbing. It's the fear of falling. But here's the thing. You can't let fear stop you. Do you remember the story of Samuel? He was just a young boy when God called him, and the message God gave him wasn't a pleasant one. Samuel didn't let fear stop him. He listened to God and shared the message with Eli, even though it was not easy. Rock climbing is the same way. You might be afraid when you look at how high you have to climb, but courage means taking one step at a time. Remember? Each step gets you closer to your goal, and just like Samuel trusted God, you can trust him too. So, what's something you're afraid of right now? Maybe it's playing in a tournament, memorizing scripture for the Pathfinder Bible experience, or praying out loud in a group. Whatever it is, ask God for courage and take that first step. You will be surprised at how strong you are with God by your side. Here's a fun idea you can try this week. Visit a facility near you that has a rock wall and give rock climbing a try. Even if there's no rock climbing facility near you, you can still practice being brave in other ways. Think of one thing that feels a little scary or difficult for you. It could be sharing your faith with a friend or standing up for what's right. Then, take a deep breath, pray, and go for it. Remember, courage grows every time you take a step forward. One of the coolest things about courage is that it gets stronger the more you use it. Just like your muscles grow when you climb or exercise, your courage grows when you trust God and take small steps of faith. And here's the best part. God promises to be with us every step of the way. Whether we're climbing a rock wall or facing a big challenge in life, we're never alone. I can't wait to hear about the ways you're practicing courage this week. Whether it's trying something new, helping someone in need, or trusting God with something big. Remember that He's always with you, holding you steady. Let's keep climbing and growing in faith and courage together. You've got this.
What a great reminder of how we can use creative methods to communicate and share God's truth with those around us. Pathfinders always inspire us with their energy and boldness in their faith. Now, we're joined by Pastor Claude Trepanner, Daniel Starinki, and Victor Dingma. We are excited for them to share about the oldest Seventh-day Adventist church in Canada. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes.
Let's start with some history. Can you tell us about the beginnings of the Adventist movement in Canada and how the South Stukely Seventh-day Adventist Church became such an important part of that story?
There's so much history before the church, and that the beginning of the church is just a result of a lot of work that was done in the townships prior to the beginning of the church. You know, Elder Bordeaux, when he came up from Bordeauxville, it was just as a result of all the work that had been done in these small English hamlets, as that we now call the Eastern Townships. So the beginning of the South Stukely Church was a need because there was so many believers that needed servicing.
But I mean, the beginning, we can retrace it to Miller, William Miller coming.
Absolutely.
1835. And then we had Joseph Bates that came and he distributed pamphlets. So William Miller brought the Adventist message, Jesus is coming, and Bates brought the Sabbath. And I think that what crystallized all that is the conversion of two brothers, the brother Bordeaux, from Baptist, from being French Baptist to Adventist, and Augustin Bordeaux was converted by Saxby, who had been touched by Bates. He had brought a pamphlet. Bordeaux wrote to Uriah Smith, to the Review and Herald. He got converted. He converted his brother, who was a teacher in La Mission Grande Ligne, which was this French Baptist mission from a Swiss missionary. And from there, they preached the Sabbath. And as Brother Victor said, many people were touched because they went in every hamlet of the Eastern Township.
You know, when you look at some of the history, you look at the names of Bolton and Melbourne and Stansted. All these places are like circling around South Stukely. So it's just obvious that you'd want to put, you know, the first church somewhere in amongst the center of all these believers. So therefore, you know, Stukely was an obvious place to start the work. Bolton at that time was very prosperous. There was a lot of new businesses starting and people were moving into the area. So when the believers realized that there was a need for some work to be done, well, Bordeaux, when he comes up from the south, from Bordeauxville, he comes into the northern of the border into Canada, where an excellent place to start working is in these townships. And Stukely is a result of that.
Yeah, I mean, lots of work. Even G and Andrews came here with Bates. I mean, great names came and worked here.
What's interesting is, you know, I've given this tour before, is that when people come here, I usually give them a small tour of where Miller started to do some of his work, like take them to Georgeville, bring him to the first church where he preached the Millerite message, show him where some of the churches still, the buildings exist. Now, unfortunately, some of during the disappointing years, well, those churches had hard times and some of them closed. And I think God sort of kept that light burning in Stukely. And Stukely has been that focal point for many of the believers around this area since 1877. So what did we give the beginning? Yes, beginning is believers, and there was believers everywhere. And Miller was a part of that. Miller come up, his message was heard, then Bates was here, and then even after one of the things people ask, what happened during their disappointing years after the Great Disappointment? Well, there was still believers here and there and everywhere through the townships. You just don't become a believer today and not a believer tomorrow. So strong pastors would continue the work, visiting these people in their homes through those difficult years as Millerite movement was changing over to the Adventist movement, therefore strengthening, these believers. And at the end of the reward was these small churches that started throughout the townships, and Stukely being the first one.
Well, William Miller was the one who taught the prophecy of Jesus coming to earth back in 1844. So, I mean, he was a great, great figure to shake people with this knowledge that Jesus was coming. So it raised faith and belief and people coming back to church and reading the Bible and all that. So it was a great, great movement. Fantastic movement.
It was the Second Advent movement where this was to be preached everywhere in North America, even to the Europe. And the people were, as Sister Starinki said, people were astonished to see that this man, William Miller, knew the Bible like he knew about Daniel and about the Revelation, and he could connect all the dots, saying, you know what, because of this verse, this is what's saying. This verse, this is what it's saying. And people started to search to find out why they had so much knowledge, and could it be for them too to know? And people got more and more interested.
The church not only grew spiritually, but also contributed to the education and the establishment of Canada's first Seventh-day Adventist school. How did this school influence the church and the wider community?
Well, education and Adventism is the right and left hand of the work. And when you start a church, especially in those times, you need to educate people, and education is part of the Adventist message. And as you have that, you begin a church, well, you begin a school. And the school was, we still have in the church, there's still, when you come to visit, you can see where they were still teaching the students. It was humble, it was simple, but the humble simple was better than nothing at the time. So they were looking for knowledge. Just like, even today, we hunger for knowledge. Well, it was no different for the people of that time. They were hungering for knowledge. And the Adventist church, the little South Stukely church, offered this service of giving them that knowledge. So did it play a crucial point?
What is interesting is that from this school went out great people. Some time ago, I met a centenarian who was a Seventh-day Adventist, and she said, from the South Stukely Church, and Mr. Clark became a scientist, and showed me the book he wrote. And he wrote books about biology and all that, but in a creationist way. And we also know that from South Stukely came a colporteur who founded the very first Seventh-day Adventist in Montreal. Yeah. So those children were not just educated to read and write, but they were educated to be missionaries, which I think is the real purpose of Adventist schools.
Over the years, South Stukely has been described as part of a relay of faith, passing on truth from generation to generation. What does this concept mean, and how has the church lived it out?
We receive so many people at the South Stukely Church. We know that our walls are limited on the amount of people that we can receive, but people come from all around the world, sometimes where they come from their different countries or across Canada, where they're hungry and they're looking for information, looking for that knowledge. They want to know where it all began, and that beginning, because it's all about beginning. In the Bible, it says in the beginning, doesn't it? It starts with the beginning, and all of us have a beginning. And from that beginning, we first believed. So where did the first believing starting in Canada? Well, it's the little humble church of South Stukely. So people are coming and they're looking and they walk away with some sort of blessing that God gives them, that it was a beginning, and their beginning carries through in the future. Like South Stukely has stood for so many years, it's that guiding light that, South Stukely just shines across this country, because we have believers that have attended our church in all the province and all the territories. So people that recognize or resound with that little building, it's so important for them that it not only is preserved now, but that it's preserved into the future, because it ties the past, the present, and the future for their beliefs.
Yeah, and then also around that church, many firsts started.
Absolutely.
There was the first temperance society in Canada that was made there by James White. Then there was the first conference, Seventh-day Adventist conference in Canada, was made near South Stukely in the Eastern Township by James White too. So the work, the organized Seventh-day Adventist work started there.
We will be celebrating in 2027 the 150th anniversary of the Stukely Seventh-day Adventist. So it's like, for people, if it stayed that long, it must be like there's something solid to keep it that long.
Today, South Stukely is described as a vibrant and diverse community. Can you share more about how the church engages with members of all ages and backgrounds?
God has seen fit to preserve this church. When we say, 1877, well, it's uninterrupted services. If you can go to the South Stukely Church since 1877, you can keep the records. They're all there. I have the book in my office that has been going on since 1877, and it's never been interrupted, which is at most rare for a small little church. And on top of it, an English church in a French province, that's even more rare. But when you come there, you walk away with that feeling that you have experienced something special. And you can try and explain it, but people, once they've experienced, they resonate with that to a sense, and that they came to Stukely. They've gone to many other churches in Canada, but they'll always remember, oh yeah, I went to the first church in Canada. But it's not just the oldest church in Canada. I've used that phrase, and people say that phrase a lot. It's the oldest church in Canada, and it is, but it's Canada's oldest church. So it doesn't belong it doesn't only belong to us. It belongs to all of Canada and to all Adventism. It's that historical point that we can be grounded to that has been secure since the beginning of Adventism here in Canada.
The church has faced challenges over time, including declining attendance and the need for revitalization. What steps were taken to ensure the church's survival and growth?
A lot of my sister churches, small English churches in the area, have fallen over the years. You know, the Waterville Church, the Dixville Church, the Bolton Center Church, they have fallen. And one of the reasons why the Stukely Church is still going is that it retains its initial goal, is that being a church in action. Through the hard years, that when we were just a few, we self-examined ourselves. And we said, why isn't it, what's happening? What's wrong? And what come out of it is that we weren't a church in action. We were existing, but you have to go outside of your four walls. Even the oldest church in Canada can't exist within its four walls. It has to retain the mission. And the mission is to go out into the community, spread the word, do the seminars, do the Bible studies. And when we started this is when our church started. The people started seeing that there was life. And now we have the situation where our benches are full. And it's not, and our demographics, when I speak to people in other churches, our demographics of South Stukely is something that only God can achieve, because 50%, and I say this proudly, 50% of our congregation is in their teen years and younger.
Yes.
So I'm being very liberal, very conservative here, because mostly it's more like 70%. On Sabbath, I asked who was 25 years and younger, and over 70% of the people raised their hands. So there has to be something happening in the South Stukely Church to have that type of numbers. So God is blessed.
I just translated an article this week where they say that most churches have no youth. American churches, the youth is not there, or very rarely. And I could say that in our church, our members are there for Sabbath school. And that's rare too in our times. People come for 11 o'clock, noon, and even 1 o'clock because they say it will never end, so we can come at any time. But in our church, at 10 o'clock in the morning, everybody, with rare exceptions, is there, which we have beautiful Sabbath school classes. And so it shows also that the people love their church, they love studying the Bible, they're happy there.
I would just like to add to this, when I had the phone call from Radio Canada to come and do a news report to our church, the one thing they said, please, let us go see what's going on in your church. Because in Quebec, the church are closing. You're going to do expansion. We don't get it. They just wanted to come and see and find out, why was it that our church was going to build another church connected to the old church and have 105 members when all the other churches in Quebec most likely are closing because there's no more people to fill in the pew. So that's why they came, and they were surprised and astonished, and they just can't wait to see the building being built for them to go back and make another report.
Yes. To bounce off that, it's when the heritage minister of Canada was in our area, she wanted to also stop at our church. There's many other churches in the area, okay? They're all different denominations. But she wanted to make a special point to stop and find out what's happening at the South Stukely Church. I think it's time that the rest of Canada, all our Adventist brothers and sisters, they got to connect. We're a connected sort of society today. They got to connect into what's happening at South Stukely. And from this, they'll understand that, God is making ready a people, not just our elderly, but our young and our old. We're making ready a people to make a commitment to finish the work.
I also think that the blessing that is on South Stukely is an answer to the prayer of our pioneers. Amen. Those people were waiting for Jesus to come. They were praying for churches to flourish. And I'm sure that the Bourdeaux and Bates and the Whites, we have even transcripts of that. They prayed for the South Stukely Church to stay, to be alive, to keep going until Jesus comes finally. And I'm sure that we are almost there.
As we reflect on today's episode, Samuel's story reminds us of the courage it takes to share God's truth. Whether it's through our words, our actions, or even our passions, such as fitness or Pathfinders, God gives each of us unique ways to share His love with the world. If today's discussion has inspired you, consider subscribing to the Canadian Adventist Messenger Magazine. You can receive a free subscription through your local Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada, or opt for a yearly subscription for just $20. You can also make a difference by becoming an agent of hope and supporting this ministry. Your participation helps us continue spreading God's love and message of hope. To donate, please visit agentsofhope.ca, where you can give by debit, credit, Apple Pay, or Google Pay. E-transfers are also accepted at agentsofhope@hopetv.ca. You can mail a check payable to Hope Channel Canada to the following address: Hope Channel Canada, 1148 King Street East, Oshawa, Ontario, L1H 1H8. Or give us a call at 1-855-4HOPE-TV. That is 1-855-446-7388. Thank you for joining us for this inspiring journey. If you've been blessed by today's episode, we invite you to share it with others. Let's continue to be messengers of hope, courage, and faith in our communities.